Hello everyone, I hope you can hear me. Sorry about that. So today we're gonna go ahead and uh, dissect this topic, which is the prevalence of narcissism. So I'm going to look at this particular answer to the question that was requested, which is why are there so many narcissists? So I personally answered this question myself separately, but I want to get into the details. I want to dive deep into this particular answer by this guy because I find it very controversial. So let's go ahead. Let's just go right into it. So he said, "No, there are not. I am speaking from over 40 years of invested study, research, knowledge, understanding, comprehension, which is the same thing, by the way, understanding, comprehension, and profession in mental health to inform the reality of what is happening. What is happening is that there are those who have taken the liberty to take usage of the word, terms, and even phrases and subvert them into misnomers. What that means is they take a word, term, or phrase and give it a new meaning, which is likely false but similar enough to be a close interpretation by imagination. I hope you can hear me. So basically, he's trying to say that it's a misnomer, that people are using it way too frequently in the wrong way to describe people who are just who might not be narcissists, who are just like maybe have a bad day, or maybe have like anomalies in their characters. Maybe they might be a little bit narcissistic, but they are not classified as NPD. You know, he's trying to say that it's way too people are using it all over the place, misusing the term. So the original and proper definition, dictionary definition of a narcissist is one who is engrossed in self-love. So that is wrong. That is not right. One who is engrossed in not self-love, it's not self-love that they are engrossed in. Narcissists are engrossed in self-indulgence, selfishness, self-obsession, self-interest, and self-admiration, and they are engrossed in self-delusion. So why do I say this? Why do I emphasize this? Because self-love, if you have self-love, you will have regard for others. You would know that to be kind to others is to be kind to yourself. You would do the right thing because it makes you happy, because it is fulfilling, because it is meaningful, because it benefits all, including yourself. And you would choose humanity over domination. You would have regard for others, you would regulate your own emotions, and you would engage in self-affirmations and meaningful actions. So that is what self-love is, and that is not a trait of a narcissist. That is far from a trait of a narcissist. So the philosophical definition was one who saw their own image and fell in love with it, and only saw perfection reflected back at them. Clinically, that is also what psychiatry or psychology consider to be narcissism, but the original name before they changed it in the 1960s was megalomania. Now, megalomania is a psychological extreme level of narcissistic disorder. Society have just gotten in the Society has just gotten in the habit of throwing narcissist around as a generic term, but what these people they are calling narcissists are nothing more than mean, cruel, sarcastic, and sadistic egotists. Otherwise, someone decided to sum up the string with one word, a misnomer, incorrectly, and it caught on. So I want to say something about this. What is incorrect about someone who is mean, cruel, sarcastic? I'm not sure why he says sarcastic. There's nothing to do with sarcasm here. Sadistic, mean, cruel, sadistic egotists. Now that is a mark of a narcissist. That is a mark of a narcissist. Why do I say that? Because they are so engrossed in self-interest that they are ruthless. They have no empathy, they have no conscience, no conscience, that they are willing to hurt others, for they are not willing to, but they are actually actively looking to hurt others just so that they can feel something. They are narcissists. The main definition of a narcissist is someone who has been so who has no humanity, who has been so deprived of self-worth and true self-value, that they look for value in power and control. And how do they get power and control? They do it by sadistic means, by devaluing others, by lying to others, by betraying their trust, by raping others of their power, their human rights. That is sadistic, that is narcissistic, that is the theme, that is the main trait of a narcissist. That is what make a narcissist: someone who is mean, someone who is cruel, and someone who is sadistic, and someone who is egoist. So that is narcissist. It is correct. It is not a misnomer. Uh, and 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 the worst thing, I want to also address the fact that he started his answer with an imposing opinion. So he's making a black and white statement. He's saying that no, he's not. He's making an imposing statement by telling people, by telling the masses, by telling the public that this is the case, and that this is the only answer, that this is the truth. So he's trying to say that this is the truth and the only truth. Sorry, that this is the truth. And he started off. He proceeded by making sure that he's introducing his own credentials first, right? Before he give his facts, he makes sure that he give his credentials first. So why does he do that? Because he's trying to impose something. He's trying to impose an idea. So normally someone who is someone who is intellectual, someone who is speaking the truth, someone who has something sensible, and something that's really worthwhile, that really means something, someone that really has essence in what they have to say. Someone would just say what they have to say. They wouldn't need to mention their credentials, and they wouldn't have to mention it as a precursor to their facts. No one does that unless they want to impose something. So I want to make all of you aware that when someone is so persistent at saying their credentials, at saying I have 40 years, I have this much experience, before they give you the facts, before they convince you, before they present you with their ideas and their knowledge, and it is just an idea, we need to judge for ourselves if that is the case, if that is in fact the truth. We need to judge for ourselves. We can't just listen to him just because he says he has 40 years, which we have no way of knowing if it is in fact the truth. Number one, it is not even, he doesn't even have evidence. We only have his word for it. And number two, he is putting it before his statement. He's putting it before his answer. He's making sure that everyone knows who he is, or who he says he is. He's making sure that everyone is aware of this so-called credential, so that whatever he has to say becomes fact, becomes truth, when in truth it might not be. You need to judge for yourself. That is what I'm trying to say. Critical thinking and censorship, right? We need to critically think for ourselves and not allow for censorship in our free thought, in our free speech, in our free will. Okay, I'm sorry, I'm just very upset by this guy. And So I shouldn't have to apologize, by the way. I'm sorry about that. So let's just go right into it. Society have gotten okay. I think that's done. Look, not everything or every human behavior must be defined by a label of mental disorder. That is unjust and a false reason for making up excuses for people who simply have bad behavior. People can just be miserable, bad, and snarky because the mood strikes them when they are around certain people. So, this is a very messy statement. I just want to say this is very, very messy because he's saying this by we shouldn't label people with mental disorders because it is a bad excuse for them. Number one, he's saying that it is a bad excuse for their bad behavior. And then number two, he just flipped it around and defend them by saying that, oh, maybe they have a bad mood, maybe they have a bad day, maybe they're just being snarky for in the moment. Maybe the mood strikes them when they're around certain people. So that is, he is switching, he is flipping from one side. He's from one end, he's saying that it shouldn't, the label shouldn't be an excuse for someone's bad behavior. And then he's flipping into saying that, oh, people who have bad behavior are only doing so because because maybe they are, they have this vibe, they have this negative energy whenever they are around certain people. So it's very messy. He's not making sense. So which is not an intellectual academic a clinical psychologist. It is not someone who is mentally well, who is what do you call that, logical, who is critical. Is not something that someone who is critical would say. It's so uh, disorganized. So that's right, he said. It could be that some folks come off as being holier than thou or pretentious in a political correctness manner. It simply rubs others the wrong way and they rebel with attitude. Then they go home and let their dear old mother plant a kiss on their forehead and they bow their heads during grace and always say, "Please pass the green beans, and Mom, you are still the best cook on the planet." As long as she is visiting and insisting on doing the cooking, and you know that your wife is a far better cook, and so does your wife, and she smiles and nods her head and agree. So a family man who lets his mother come visit for extended periods and is ever so humble, he is not inflicted with a mental disorder, nor normally has a bad behavior. He just does his thing in rebellion towards the pretentious, angelic type. This is again, like, this is just weird. Like, what is this? I don't understand what he's just misleading people, word salad, just throwing words in your face, throwing different ideas into your face. It is like a child. Like, what kind of a psychologist would write something like this? you know he's saying that, he's just directing you towards the mindset of a very, very specific case where someone who is actually nice to, who is falsely nice. Actually, he's trying to say that someone who is just being nice to their mother because they're obligated to, and they say that their mother is a better cook, even though they know that the wife is a better cook, and they get their wife to act the same way, in the same respectful manner towards their mother. So that is a very, very specific case where someone who is a family man and respects their mother and loves the mother, but but has a bad attitude towards others, towards the pretentious, angelic type, because of dislike, or because they are opposed to them. That is not relevant. It is weird. Like, what is that? I don't even know what to say. It is just like throwing words around. So I think So I think the he's trying to lead people's mind, just confuse people. Basically, it's so confusing. He's trying to lead people into thinking that maybe people, maybe people are just, people are just bad to certain people because they have different upbringing. They have different ideologies and beliefs, and they just, because of dislike, that they abuse others. Because of dislike, maybe they show off some attitude, or some bad behavior that might be falsely accused as narcissistic, as abuse. So that's what he's trying to say. Okay, but you will see later on in my reply, in my comment, that is not relevant to the question, which is, why are there so many narcissists? Because people who ask this question already know that narcissistic abuse is far, far worse than just attitude, or normal bad behavior, or snarky comments. No, it is far worse than that. It involves gaslighting, triangulation, horrible smear campaigns, and abuse, covert psychological abuse, mind control, think psychological torture, that you have no way to pinpoint, and no way out of that. You have no escape from it. It's really, really terrible abuse. So that is nothing to do with dislike, or just like disagreement. Someone who has a mindset that disagrees with another person's belief, that does not create this beast, this monster that would abuse others for their pleasure, for power and control. That has nothing to do with narcissism. Okay. And yes, sometimes people get irritated within their own environment, and instead of being sensible and logical about things, and admitting that there is no longer any love or human connection in the relationship, and they should divorce and go their separate ways, instead they rage, become deceitful, and engage in the blame and name game, and declarations of being a victim. So this is marriage, right? This is inside a marriage. And again, he's like being so vague, and he's phrasing his sentences in such a vague word salad manner that it confuses you. It dumbs down your mind. It is almost like it's a neuro-linguistic strategy, a kind of mind control tactic that lulls your mind, that hypnotizes you into confusion, into utter confusion. And because previously he said that he was a psychologist, that gives him the right, almost, it's like a programming in our heads. Because he has the authority, because he says he has the authority, then we dismiss how messy, how disorganized, how confusing his statements are. So that does not give him the right, just because he has a credential, just because he has 40 years of experience, research, and study into this subject. That does not give him a right to just create this confusion, this messy statement, create this fog that dumbs people down, that makes the subject of narcissism vague, that creates this a smokescreen for the subject of narcissistic abuse. That is what he's trying to do. So in this paragraph, he's talking about marriage, right? He's talking about broken marriages. So he says, why? Because it is against their religion, because separation is not good for their children. So he's trying to suggest that people who have bad behavior, that is misunderstood as narcissism, people who have bad behavior that are misunderstood as narcissistic, they are doing it because they have broken marriages, because their marriage has slowly over the years gone down the dumps, and they refuse to get a divorce because of religion, or because separation is not good for the children. So this is the reason for their bad behaviors, which is, which is in no way narcissistic. He's trying to say, it is a it is a it is it is a excuse, not excuse, but it is a reason why people uh, become bitter or mean or cruel in a relationship, in a marriage, right? That is what he's trying to say. Okay, social society and their excuses. Yes, they can rant and rave and tell me how horrible I am. Yet I have been in the mental health business a long, long time. And those who clued in early on that there was an issue sought me out and we found resolution before it became a problem. Before anyone was blame before anyone was blamed or labeled with a name or called themselves a victim. So in this paragraph, he made two statements. First, he made the statement that people are making excuses. You know, people are making excuses for becoming a victim of narcissistic abuse when they are actually just being mistreated, when they are actually being just lightly mistreated. I think that's what he's trying to say. And then he says the second point he made is that he has been in the business, mental health business, so long that and he has so many clients that sought him out to find a resolution of the problem before they can label another person as narcissistic or label themselves as the victim. So and find a resolution before the labeling process. So that is, in my opinion, that is okay. First of all, we only have his word for it. Again, we only have his word for it. And second of all, why does he find the need to prevent this label? Why is it so bad to label someone? Right? When someone is being evil and cruel and mean, we call them narcissistic. Why is it so bad to call them that? All right, first of all, it's because it ruins their reputation, right? It's because when we call them narcissistic, then everyone is gonna label when we label them, then everyone else is gonna have a distorted perception of them. Everyone else is gonna have an impression of them that they are evil, they're narcissistic, that they are never gonna change, that they are corrupted forever. That is the reason why we shouldn't label someone. So it is good not to label someone if they are not narcissistic, but it is always essential to label someone if they are being narcissistic. Why? Because if they are narcissistic and you don't call them out, then you're allowing the abuse. You're allowing someone to run wild, to run loose. You're allowing a criminal, a psychological criminal, to run wild and allow them to abuse other victims without giving others a sign, without giving others a warning sign, without putting a red a red flag on their face, so to speak. You know. So labeling is important to some extent. It is not always wrong to label someone. So and then he says this thing about victimization, which is very, very, in my opinion, is very, very wrong. So he said, you are only a victim because you didn't act in the first place. Instead you stated you had no choice, which by all reckoning is in fact and truth an excuse. It is by all reckoning an excuse. So I wrote here in my notebook that calling them a narcissist. Sorry, I yeah. You He's trying to say that you are to blame for being terrorized by a narcissist, right? That calling them a narcissist is an excuse for not breaking out of a toxic relationship, for not fighting for your rights, for not taking action against, against someone who is taking away your power, for not taking action. So calling them a narcissist and playing the victim is basically an excuse for not taking action, is what he's saying. So I want to say that this is not true Why? Because narcissists will not conquer, they will corner you from every direction, and they will make sure that you have no choice, that whatever move you take is the wrong move. Whatever response you make is the wrong response. They will make sure that you believe whatever you do, they will make sure that you believe that you are to blame, that you are to blame for whatever you do. You know that maybe you shouldn't have engaged with them in the first place. Maybe you shouldn't have acted this way. Maybe you shouldn't have responded in that way. You know, it is it they have everything planned out. That is the mark of a narcissist. So another thing that I want to make sure that he's making a blanket statement that is offensive to people who couldn't act, to people who really didn't have a choice, right? He's being offensive to these people, the people who are real victims, who are financially dependent on the narcissist, who have been made financially dependent, who are heavily gaslighted, who are facing death threats from the narcissist, death threats, and who have been lied to for years, who didn't understand what was happening or even believe that it can happen. So these people did not take action because they couldn't, because they didn't believe that it can happen, because they are financially tight, because they are dependent on the narcissist, because they have been lied to, and there is no way out. Most times narcissists will make sure that there is no escape for their victims, and to call this to tell someone who is being victimized by, who is being terrorized by a narcissist, that they are making an excuse, that that they should be blamed for calling themselves a victim, that is a great offense. That is not right. So I'm speaking he is he is speaking for the masses, right? He is speaking for all victims. He is speaking for all victims. He is speaking for them. He's not allowing them to speak for themselves. He is speaking for them, that they should not call themselves a victim, because they should take action, because they should not have allowed this abuse to happen. So that is what he's trying to say, that narcissists are never to blame. I, Maybe he's not saying that, but that people are, that sometimes people are not to blame for their bad behavior, that sometimes they are being enabled to do so. That's what he's trying to say. But no, there are people out there who have made it their life's mission to destroy the lives of other people. There are people like that. And I'm very certain that people are getting more aware about this. They're awakening to this fact that there are more and more sick people, more and more sadists, more and more psychopaths, more and more narcissists out there looking to destroy other people's lives. I'm sure people know about this. People who know about this are asking this question, are following this question. I'm very sure of it. So I commented, when someone fits the label of a narcissist, why in the world should they not be classified as a narcissist? You may have decades of experience in mental health, but it sounds like you are merely using your credentials to deflect the obvious prevalence of narcissism in the world today. It is not an excuse when you are calling someone out for who they are. It is not an excuse. It is just a statement. It is a statement of truth when you are calling someone out for who they are. Okay, so I will give evidence of the statement that I made about the obvious prevalence of narcissism in the world today. I'm not just imposing it. I will give a what do you call that, a supporting evidence later in my comment below, but I will keep reading for now. And if you have any experience with a narcissist at all, you would know that it is not so easy to just act to leave the narcissist. Any reaction is the wrong reaction. Every response is the wrong response. The narcissist will make sure of that. And with respect to victimization, who are you talking to? You are making a general blanket statement that suggests that everyone who has experienced abuse only have themselves to blame for not acting. You have no respect for abuse victims or survivors at all. And instead of acknowledging the rise of abuse in society today, the obvious, I wrote here, the supporting evidence, which is the obvious incline in YouTube channels dedicated to narcissistic abuse and counseling and abuse victims starting to speak up. So if you go to YouTube or if you research online on coaching for narcissistic abuse, there is a wealth of people, there is a wealth of coaches, there is a wealth of businesses dedicated to narcissistic abuse recovery and how to cope with narcissism. And there is a wealth of people speaking up about their abuse, people speaking up in videos, in forums, in blogs. There is a wealth, there is a abundant resource for narcissistic abuse recovery out there, and which shows the obvious rise in narcissism and psychopathy. So I continue by saying, you deflect this phenomena by blaming it on the victims. That is not right. And I'm seriously dumbfounded by the number of people ignorant enough to accept and upvote this disgraceful answer. There are 10 people upvoting this. What the hell are we doing? What are we doing? Worst of all, you already anticipated retaliation. You already anticipated retaliation by saying, I know people will think that I'm horrible, etc. That doesn't excuse or shield you from shifting blame to the victims, when in truth, the predicament is always much more complicated and painful than it seems. And also that he's being vague with the term that he said, bad behavior. He's being very vague about it. He didn't say that the bad behavior is persistent, sadistic, evil, cruel, and targeted, planned abuse. He didn't say that abuse is bad behavior. He just made the vaguely described statement, bad behavior, in his initial answer. So, and what is the point of your answer really, I said, but to only dismiss and discredit the fact that narcissists are everywhere. Your profession does not give you a free pass to dismiss the horrific torture and insanity that abuse victims had to go through. And I write, I'm just speechless. And then he replied me with the very first statement that he said was that apparently you're not as speechless as you claim. Wow, that is the first thing that he said. So he discredited me by saying, apparently you're not as speechless as you claim. It is like a childish, immature way of deflecting whatever I have to say, And it is a what do you call it? It is an expression of the depth of dumbfoundedness, that I have been reduced to by his answer, that I'm saying I'm speechless. It is an expression of my incredulity, that I'm so incredulous by his answer. So he said, let me be more informative. When you so choose to bring my credentials into question, you must learn to accept, realize, and understand that we have made distinct choices in our lives. I won't read the full answer to this because it is like very, very long. Again, word salad and confusing, like irrelevant paragraphs in there as well. But I will read the relevant ones and just briefly go over the ones that is just way too elaborated. That is unnecessary, to be honest. So I'll let's go through it. I'll try to make it brief. So you may learn to accept, realize, and understand that we have made distinct choices in our lives to dedicate a large part of our lives into a field of academic science and study in order to gather, garner, and learn sanctioned knowledge and to stay in the education system for a great number of years to better understand, comprehend. Again, understand and comprehend is the same thing. Utilize and maintain the structures and disciplines of gained knowledge. So again, we only have his word for this. We only have his word that he has gone through years of education and his credentials. And even though he has his credentials, you know, it doesn't give him a free pass to just dismiss, other people's victimization, other people being victimized by narcissists. And he continued by saying it is not healthy to stay in the victim mentality, which I later, you can see in my later comment or reply, that I said that it is true that we should never stay in the victim mentality. In fact, it is detrimental to our health, and that is not what I'm saying here. What I'm saying is that it is wrong to say, to blame the victim for not speaking up, for not taking action against the abuse. We can't do that to a victim. When they are being abused by someone, the first thing we should do to someone who is just freshly being abused by a victim, freshly awakening, freshly realizing that they are being abused by someone, we should the very first thing we should do is have compassion for them, and understand where their situation, and support them. We should not blame them by saying, you're not taking action, you should have done this, you should have left them a long time ago, what is wrong with you, you should do this, you should do that, what the hell is wrong with you, all those negativity. It is not right to do that to a victim. It is not right to do that to someone who is freshly coming out from a narcissistic abuse. No. Let me just take a sip for a while. Okay. So let's just continue to what he has to say. So I must again stress the word, he said, I must again stress the word knowledge, because to have knowledge is all in the prefix know, which is to know, which is a far, far cry from to think or to believe. Also, Also, it may interest you that a good many of us who have put in great focus, determination, dedication, and devotion into our education and knowledge have done so because we ourselves have been handicapped by trauma and abuse by someone within our family that had a mental disorder, and we had not just the capacity to realize that there must be that there must be alternative solutions to the way those with disorders are labeled, but also alternative ways we who have been affected by those disorders to learn to be supportive, compassionate, and show a modicum of empathy and personal strength. Okay, so he is advocating for people with narcissistic personality disorders, or people with disorders, people with mental disorders. He's advocating for them. He is trying to say that there has to be an alternative solutions to labeling them. He's defending them. There has to be alternative solutions to alternative ways we have been affected by those disorders and learn to be right. I'm not sure what he's trying to say. So he's trying to say that there has to be alternative ways to than to label them, and that we should be supportive, we should be compassionate, and show a modicum of empathy and personal strength against narcissists. So I want to say that they do not have a right, that they do not have a right for our compassion. We do not have a obligation to the narcissists who have constantly abused us. We do not have an obligation to show them empathy. In fact, if we do show them empathy, they will use it against us. So why in the heck should we show empathy for narcissists? Why? So, I grew up in a volatile home environment. Okay, I might have been a bit too strong over that. We should have some level of empathy for everyone, but we should not forgive them for what they have done to us. We should not forget the abuse. We should make sure that they are brought to justice and have the right treatment, that they should be hospitalized, that they should be quarantined and treated for their mental disorder, because they are terribly, terribly psychotic, and they would just destroy other people's lives for their own pleasure, for power and control. And that is just not right. That we should not show them, you know compassion, when we should not show them compassion in a direct way, because that will just harm us. And that is not the first thing that we need to do. The first thing that a narcissistic abuse victim needs to do is to protect themselves. We need to protect ourselves. We need to find safety. That is the first thing that we need to do, not to have compassion for someone who is psycho. Okay. I grew up in a volatile home environment with five older siblings, I being the youngest in a time that no one talked about mental disorders. And my mother suffered from what was called in the day manic depressive disorder. Excuse me. Which today is called bipolar disorder. Back then, there was very little available public information. Mental health facility and psychiatry was the dominant factor. Psychiatric institutes were more dominant than prisons in North America. Why? Because the belief was criminals were insane. That theory has been completely dismissed. Yet it is still true that some people are insane and do criminal things. There are far more criminals than there are far more criminals that are criminals out of passion, greed, jealousy, and political power mongering, although the latter can be associated with genuine narcissism. So he is trying to say that real narcissists are criminals out of passion, criminals out of greed, criminals out of jealousy and political power mongering. Those are the real narcissists, and those are prevalent. There are far more criminals, sorry, not prevalent, but there are far more of these type of criminals who are criminals out of passion than there are criminals who are out of insanity, basically. Criminals who are insane. So, uh, that might be true actually. Criminals who are actually narcissistic over criminals who are insane. Okay, but that is not really relevant to what we are saying here. So let's just keep going. Yet, as much as it might be relevant later, but let's just keep going. Yet, as much as I suffered from the rampant mood swings of my mother, of which she went into rages of anger and violence, or in a vegetative state of depression, there were times she was lucid and a woman of high intelligence, kindness, and guilt because of her condition. So at the time The standard medical treatment by psychiatrists was amphetamines and barbiturates, otherwise in street terms called uppers and downers. I, at the time, at a very young age, set a goal that I wanted to change ideals, perspectives, education, as well as compassion and empathy towards those of severe mental health disorders. So for that, I needed the best education and knowledge available, and I worked hard to achieve scholarships and ways to pave my own way to obtain said educational knowledge, realizing that knowledge is best appreciated and savored if it is diligently earned and nothing is given. So, again, unless you share the same earned factual knowledge that I possess, you have no stake to discredit what I know from what you believe because of your experiences. So, he's trying to say that, so again, we only have his word for it that he has achieved scholarships, that he appreciates and savors knowledge, because he diligently earned it, and that nothing is given for him. Nothing, no acknowledgement, no financial rewards, which we have no way of knowing. How do we know? We only have his word for it. There is no evidence. There is no way that we can look into this. We may be able to look into his background, but there is no way within this answer, within this comment, to be able to discern the truth of this statement. And then he goes on by saying that I have no stake to discredit what he has to say because of what I believe, versus what he knows to be truth. So just because he has knowledge, which we have no way of knowing if it is true knowledge, because true knowledge is one that is the truth, one that shows that one that sounds not sounds, one that is true to everyone, right? One that is universal truth. So we have no way of knowing whether his truth is in fact the real truth, right? Just because he says it is true, just because he has education, just because the system says it's true, doesn't mean that it is in fact the truth. We need to question some things. We need to critically question facts. We need to question the facts that is being presented to us. We can't just digest it. We can't just accept it. We have to question. We have to contemplate for ourselves. We have to judge for ourselves based on not only our experiences, but also our intuition, our inner knowing, our universal consciousness. Our We do have this. We have a right to truth. We have a born connection to truth. And when someone says something that doesn't sound true, that doesn't really feel true to you, that doesn't in your inner gut, inner knowing, that doesn't connect to that, then you need to question. You need to oppose it. You need to not believe it, because only you, because everyone has a connection to truth, and only you get to decide what is true. Only you have that power to control your belief of what is true. Don't let other people control that part of you. You have the right to judge for yourselves what other people are saying. And don't just because he says he knows, just because he imposed the fact that he knows, doesn't mean that you should believe it. Okay? That is not right. To force someone to believe what you say, that is not free thought, that is not free speech, that is not free will. Okay, he continued by saying, so again, victimization itself is not classified as mental disorder, but it is a prelude to a multitude of classified mental disorders. Anywhere from depression to PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, and an assortment of self-image issues. phobias, paranoia issues, and of course hate prejudices. Mostly it is just self-pity. Self-pity happens to be easily removed by a good therapist. Okay. So he proceeded by saying victimization is not a mental health disorder. It is so okay, so he said that it is related to self-image issues, phobias, paranoia, and hate prejudices. Hate prejudices. So victimization, I would say the major true statement that he made is that victimization is very largely related to, if it is not in check, if you do not have it in check, victimization is highly related to self-pity. So, and then all of a sudden he just goes off track and says self-pity happens to be easily resolved by a good therapist. You know, he's advocating, he is controlling your mind to have a short attention span, to flip from one subject to another within the span of two sentences. He's flipping from one thing to another. So he's just trying to make you have a short attention span. He's trying to dumb you down. This is someone, I'm very sure that this is someone who is part of a cult of someone who is trying to make people to reduce people's attention span. That is just not right. The word salad that he's using, the word salad that he has used, and the flipping that he keeps using, the flipping from this I thought pattern, this train of thought, this idea that he's presenting. All of a sudden, it flips to a completely different subject that is just related by one word: self pity. It is just flipped completely, right? He's talking about victimization, self-pity, and all of a sudden he flips to, oh, self-pity happens to be easily resolved by a good therapist. It is just insane. You know, all of a sudden you're reading about victimization, and all of a sudden he flips. Within the span of two sentences, he flips into self-pity. Can be resolved by a good therapist. You know, this entire thing has nothing to do with what how you know, the strategy to solve self-pity, the strategy to what do you call it, to rid yourself from self-pity. There is nothing to do with that. Okay, let's just continue. It can't be any more straightforward. No one should remain a victim nor carry the scars of being victimized. And I agree, no one should do that. But you should not say, that doesn't give you the premise, that doesn't give you the right to blame the victims and to force them into having to impose on them that they should have empathy for their abusers rather than having empathy and forgiveness for themselves, which is the crucial and the very first thing any psychologist or therapist should be saying to a victim of narcissistic abuse. It can't be any more straightforward. No one should remain a victim nor carry the scars of being victimized. More important, if it is an actual genuine narcissist, I have to ask, what do you hope to accomplish? A genuine narcissist is what do you hope to accomplish? He's trying to say. A genuine narcissist is a mental health disorder and under the protection of most nations' Mental Health Act. So he's trying to say that people who are insane, who are narcissistic, who are abusive, are protected by the Mental Health Act. That because they have a mental disorder, that the state would, that the country, the nation, all nations, he's trying to say nations, most nations would protect them, would not incriminate them by the grounds of mental disorder, which I will get to later, which is in fact a truth. You know, some people are in fact not incriminated, that they are absolved of their horrific abuse by the grounds of mental illness, which is not right, which we have to fight against, by the way, that we have to at least quarantine them and confine them, hospitalize them for the abuse, for the amount of abuse, that for the psychological torment that they have subjected to countless to countless to a lot to a countless number of people. That is just horrible, horrific. We have to do something about it, at least not, imprison them, but at least quarantine them and find a treatment for them, you know okay. You would have not find a treatment, but at least, try to lessen their narcissism. So you would have to have absolute sanctioned proof of diagnosis by a mental health professional, which in such case would have to be obtained under a court order, because you setting aside as the one prosecuting would leave the assumed narcissist being the plaintiff, which means it will require the plaintiff to be placed in a facility until a mental health professional can determine absolute narcissistic personality disorder, which would work against you, because if that is proven, then because of such condition, they can't be held responsible for their actions because of their state of mind due to their mental condition. So, again, that is not right, which I've said. But more importantly, this is not, this does not give this does not block this shouldn't deter us from revealing the fact that there is a rise in narcissists and psychopaths, that there is a rise in abuse in every nation, everywhere. I've studied in the UK, it happens in the UK. I'm living in Malaysia, it's happening in Malaysia. It's happening in my previous job. I've migrated, I've changed my place of living more than a number of times, and every place that I live, for every state that I am living, I've lived two states. I've lived in two different areas now, and three more than two different areas. But from my home to my study area to UK to here in Kuala Lumpur, everywhere that I go, my job places, the places that I'm shopping, everywhere that I go to, narcissists, psychopaths, everywhere. And I'm not saying that everyone is a narcissist, but there is definitely a rise in abusive people who have no boundaries, people who does not respect your privacy, your personal space, your basic human rights, people who are pathological liars. Not pathological liar. You can't possibly know within the span of a brief encounter. But people who are just manipulative. You can know that they are manipulative in their way they communicate to you, the way they are gaslighting you, the way that they are just making just making sure that you are, you're being psychologically tormented. They are everywhere, these abusive individuals. And within the span of a brief encounter, within the span of 10 minutes, you will feel so violated by these people. You will feel so violated that your personality becomes distorted. You feel like you lose yourself within that 10 minutes of talking to them, by gaslighting, by ignoring you, by acting like they didn't hear you when you have spoken, yet when we have vocally used your voice loudly and talk to them. They actively ignore you when you have a right not to be ignored by someone who is working in customer service or whatever. That should not happen in any nation, in any country, in anywhere. We have a right and we need to speak up. We need to fight against this. Okay. So, however, if a said accused is merely diagnosed as being an overbearing, egotistic, egotistical sadist, then you can prosecute and lay charges to your heart's content for damages, both physical and mental. Oh yes, psychology does include ins and outs of legal ramifications of mental health situations pertaining to laws of the land. Okay. By the way, this does not like repudiate my this is not a debate against my statement that he's just saying that he has experience against he has experience against his credentials is because he has a dedication to narcissistic abuse, that he has experienced narcissistic abuse from childhood, that he has faced victimization from childhood, that he has that he has a soft spot for people with narcissistic personality, people with mental disorders, and he's showing off his knowledge about mental health, about mental disorders, about the law pertaining mental disorders, and what we can do with the law against abuse. That is just irrelevant. That is nothing to do with what I just said. You know, he's just trying to bolster his credentials. He's trying to convince people that he has, to believe him, to not listen to me, to believe him, to make sure that everyone is listening to him because he has so much experience, because he has so much knowledge, that we have no way of knowing if it is an actual truth, if it is the actual truth, but that we have no way of knowing that, but to only question it ourselves. We have no way to know that unless we question it ourselves, unless we judge for it ourselves, unless we really think about it ourselves. Not to just listen to him and say, oh, yeah, you're right because you have so much experience, because this. No, we have to think about it. Is it really true? Is it really true that he is in fact being that he was in fact subjected to narcissistic abuse, which which I have a small inkling of doubt, because if you are in truth being abused by a narcissist, then you will have the sense, you will have the basic sense not to have compassion for a narcissist, that you should not have too much compassion, that you would have the sense to say we should not have too much compassion for them. We should have compassion at a distance, at a with very careful, with high severe caution. That the first thing that you should say when you are when you have faced narcissistic abuse is that you should protect yourself. You should be careful against narcissists, not that you should have compassion for them. God, no. You should be careful of them. So, okay. He continued by saying, "Yet look what society has accomplished. I grew up in an age where we had childhood taunts, stick and stones. Again, this is way too much information. Like it is just like irrelevant as well. When childhood taunts, come on, like give like important facts for God's sakes. You're a psychologist. I grew up in an age where we had childhood taunts. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me. Or I'm rubber and you're glue. What bounces off me sticks to you. Ironically, many of us held true to those silly taunts, and because of them, this is the very frail point. It is a very frail statement. It is so There is no proper grounds for this. That Oh my gosh, I don't know what to say. Just decide for yourself, people. Just decide for yourself. I don't want to impose anything, but just really think it through what he's saying. Many of us held true to those silly taunts, and because of them, we developed thick skins, meaning we understand what such words, slander, prejudice, bigotry, and trash talk gets tossed at us, but we grew up with the fortitude to let such things slide and bounce off without taking offense. So he's trying to say that we should have a personal strength, right? We should have resilience against this, that we should not let narcissistic abuse get to us. That's basically what he's saying. Otherwise, what a person chooses to say about me is not really my issue, it is their issue. Therefore, they should be the one to carry their own burden of hate, prejudice, bigotry, racism, and so on. I've chosen not to weigh myself down with the extra load. Okay, that is a good mindset, by the way. That you should not, you should not burden yourself with other people's hate. It is their issue, not my issue. It is a way to detach yourself from narcissists. It is a way to not engage with them. It is a way to go gray rock on them. But again, this is, I don't know. At least there's some level of truth in some of what he says, you know. Okay, then again, we do have free will that entitles anyone to make any choice they so choose. It is not a matter of choice being right or wrong. It is simply the matter of human entitlement to choose. Thus, one of the highest choice is that of opinion. I cannot take away from anyone who wishes to voice an opinion. At the same time, I should also have the same choice to counter or debate said opinion with educated, knowledgeable facts and truth. Okay, so what has he given? What has he given us? He has not given us any knowledgeable facts or truth. All that he has given us is subjective, no way of knowing if it's true. No way of evidence, no proper evidence statements. He's given us stories. He's given us recounts. He's given us vague statements. He has not given us a proper debate. Okay, you said that you have a right to debate. Yes, that is what I'm looking for. That is what I'm looking for. A proper grown up, a proper sensible, logical debate, which he has not engaged in. All he's just done is just giving stories to bolster his credentials, to make sure that people believe what he say. So, and then he make this statement. Okay, everyone has free will. I give everyone the free will. I give you the right to voice your opinion, and I should have the right to voice my opinion as well. Yes, in fact, I did not discredit him. I did not discredit him. I only opposed him. I opposed him. And later you can see that I opposed this statement as well. But what I'm trying to say that is that he did not make educated. He did not debate by giving he did not debate my opinion by giving educated, knowledgeable facts and truth. He did not give that. What did he give? He gave his own beliefs. He gave his own ideas. He gave not facts, not even his own ideas really. He give he give his stories, as I said, his past things to bolster up his credentials, and he give irrelevant facts about the law, facts about mental health being protected under the law, the Mental Health Act. It is not a reasonable, it is not a sensible debate. It is very delusional. So let's just go continue what he has to say. So I won't go too deep into this. We're going to end anyways, but let's just go right. Let's just go into the next one. It has gone. Sorry. Okay. It's over here. I think it's over here. I choose not to weigh myself down. Right, over here. I've learned through my experiences. Sorry about that, guys. I've learned through experiences of humanity by means of research, and I've done research over 100 countries. This is work directed in the field. This is work directly in the field, meeting, communicating, and socializing with everyday people of community, not that of other scientists, politicians, or researchers. Why? Because they built their research on statistics. How do they formulate statistics? That is easy, either by surveys or polls. But the problem with those is that they are written in directive formats. Otherwise, they ask specific questions and leave no room for alternative thought. Point being, choose the answer that best suits you. Well, what does that do if no answer suits you? Leaving any answer blank. Get your survey or poll tossed. Can you see how disconnected his sentences are? His sentences are so disconnected that the points are disconnected. It is so disorganized. It is in disarray. We need to wake up to this word salad. We need to wake up to this. And I can't believe that people actually upvoted his initial answer. I really can't believe it. The degree of insane confusion that he's trying to create in others. He started off by saying that he's done research in 100 countries, and then he digressed by saying, "Oh, he does the work directly, and he didn't talk with scientists, politicians, or researchers because they built their research on statistics, which is heavily flawed by a pre-existing answer, a pre what do you call that, a predetermined answer. A predetermined answer. So the scientists, politicians, and researchers, they are heavily biased, is what he is trying to say in his disconnected sentences. He's trying to say that all the surveys and polls, all the statistics, all these scientists, politicians, and researchers, they are heavily biased. That's what he's trying to say. And that is why he's done research outside of that. He's done research in meetings, communicating, and socializing with everyday people, normal people, narcissistic people, families, normal, everyday people. That's what he's trying to say. He's trying to bolster his credentials again, which again we have no way of knowing, but I have no objection to. If you say, I actually agree with him that you should not base on research that is biased. You should look for scientists. You should still look for scientists that are researching and doing surveys that are unbiased. There are still people out there doing research. Research is necessary. Again, he's trying to say that all research, a blanket statement, all research, all scientists, all politicians, all researchers, all polls, all surveys are biased, have predetermined answers. Okay. My research is about people talking and doing things they do. I think I'm just gonna read the whole thing. Sorry, guys. I'll just quickly go through it. I won't comment too much about it, but I will share my answer later. Sorry, my comment to his reply. So my research is about people talking and doing things that they want to do, and what they can do, what they are allowed to do. Okay, again, he's saying he's projecting, he's presenting a front that he is advocating for free speech, free will, and free thought, when in reality he is covertly trying to direct people's mind, impose on people's mind, force people's mind to confine into the to restrict into the confines of his mentality, of his belief system, of his way of life. Not we might it might not even be his way of life, but to confine people to a particular program of belief system that he wants people to be subjected to. That is basically what he's doing, guys. If you're awakened to it, if you're aware of it, that is what he's doing. He's trying to condition people to think the way that he wants them to think, not presenting facts in an unbiased way, not presenting facts for people to judge for themselves, not presenting facts for people to critically analyze for themselves. No, that's not what he's doing. He's imposing. Guys, he's imposing on you. I'm really upset by the 10 upvoters. The 10 people who upvoted his initial answer. I'm very upset by them. And the fact that nobody commented on this answer. 2.7k views, 2k views. What are we doing? Nobody is saying, nobody is speaking up to this insanity. What are we doing? My research is about people talking and doing things they want to do, what they can do, what they are allowed to do, and if they are willing to make sacrifices to make changes for the better. They understand that I'm not a journalist, a government employee, and that I'm extremely respectful and reverent about their traditions, rules of faith in their home, and are always impressed that I'm willing to eat what they eat and as they eat without complaint and statements of avoidance. Okay, let's just go ahead with it. Do you know what the most Okay. Do you know what the most common statement I get because of this? It is clear that you're not an American. This is not to offend Americans, but to only to point out that many nations are not fond of American visitors. What is that? How is that relevant? How is that relevant to what we have to say? Most nations are not fond of Americans. Wow. What the fuck? What is wrong with him? There has nothing to do with narcissistic abuse. There has nothing to do with the research on psychology. There has nothing to do with abuse, with psychopathy. Okay. Okay, there was a book written and published in 1958 by co-authors Eugene Burdick and William Lederer, called The Ugly American. Although it was political fiction, it was written and published in America. It also became a movie starring Marlon Brando. It basically, again, why would he say starring this guy? Why would he say published in this, co-authors this? Just say the book, man. Like those are just way too irrelevant. You're making a point here. If you want to share the book, share it later. Those are just words. They're just irrelevant statements. That's just dumbing down our minds again. Dumbing down our minds. That is not relevant. You should just say there was a book called The Ugly Americans by Eugene and William, B. Eugene and L. William, right? Although it was political fiction, it was written in and published in America. That is quite irrelevant as well, right? So you should just say that there was a book written called you should put this in front, called The Ugly American by this guy. It's just very disorganized. It also became a movie starring Marlon Brando. It also became a movie. Why do you need to call up the star? It is irrelevant. It basically points out the arrogant behavior of American diplomats when they are abroad. It created quite a stir. Many countries took up the phrase "ugly American" because Americans were so loud. When President John F. Kennedy read the book, he recommended that everyone in the Senate and the House should read it. Also, the book was partly responsible in the establishment of the United States Peace Corps. Ironically, they have a fair-sized budget, but it often gets pinched by the U.S. military. Peacekeeping is not an international priority of the USA. The sad part is that American governments and the bureaucracy is gun-shy of providing funding for mental health issues. Yet so are many other countries. It is a general stigma. If you can't see it, is it really there? So this is really bad. This is a really bad organization of facts. He should definitely start off by saying that the American government is gun-shy of providing funding for mental health issues, or at least direct the conversation towards that. Prepare people of the fact that he's trying to say, of the main fact that he's trying to say, which is that American government is gun shy of providing funding for mental health issues. That is the main fact. And how does he prepare us towards it? He prepares us towards it by saying all this, like he did not prepare us for it. He just basically say, it basically points out the arrogant. He describes all about the films. He described all about the book, and he's saying that people are using the term ugly Americans more often because Americans were so loud. That has no connection, no zero connection to what he's about to say, to his main point, which is American government is gun shy of providing funding for mental health issues. So I just want you guys to be aware of this insane programming, this insane, like, stunted and flipping, stunted and messy statements. It's just a group of messy statements that he's just jumbling all up together, that has no connection to one another, and it's just dumbing down our minds. So we need to not allow our minds to just accept this and just let this go. We need to tell ourselves that, okay, he's not making sense. He's trying to create short attention spans. He's trying to create a lot of different subjects, and then make us look at a lot of different shiny objects, and then all of a sudden give this point. It's just really, really bad. It's just dumbing down our minds. Okay, so let's just go ahead with my answer. I continued by saying, I replied to his comment by saying, granted, no one should ever stay in a victim mentality for longer than necessary, and that wallowing in self-pity is never healthy. But you should not shame people for feeling sorry for themselves when life has smacked them in the face time and time again. Sometimes they do have a premise for feeling victimized and mad at the unfairness of the world. They have a right to wallow to some degree, And in fact, victimization is the first step to recovery, because it is an awakening for most people, an acceptance that one has been abused. Okay. Another point, but I start by saying, granted, we should not stay for it too long. We should not stay in victimization too long, but we should allow ourselves to recognize that we have been a victim of narcissistic abuse if we have been. And I'm sure a lot of people know what narcissistic abuse is. A lot of people are not wrongly defining narcissism. Why? Because there is so many resources out there, online, books, so many videos saying, describing the same thing, describing narcissism with the same words, with the same explanations, with the same relation to other topics like gaslighting, triangulation, covert abuse, and psychopathic behavior, inhumane, ruthless, unempathetic, zero empathy, zero conscience behavior, that sadistic behavior that they engage in. I'm sure everyone knows very well, especially people who are asking and following this question of, why are there so many narcissists in this world? Why are there narcissists everywhere? Why do I see narcissists everywhere? I'm sure people have already educated themselves to the degree of knowing what narcissistic abuse look like, to be able to ask the question of, why are there so many narcissists? Okay. Not everyone, but most people. Okay. Another point I want to make is on knowledge. Knowledge is not confined to intellectual, textbook, and research materials. It is much more vast than that. It encompasses information and insights derived from deep contemplation, self-inquiry, spiritual awakening, intuition, and or an inner knowing, etc. Knowledge is unbiased. Sorry. Knowledge are solid, comprehensive facts that make sense without the need to mention credentials. Knowledge is unbiased and allows free thought and critical analysis of its validity. It allows the people to judge for themselves the truth of whatever has been delivered. I'm not saying that your credentials don't matter, but I'm saying that you are abusing your title to impose an idea or belief onto others, and as a bulletproof defense against any disagreement with whatever you present. Logically speaking, credentials aside, the reason you gave for why narcissism isn't as widespread as many may think is very frail and vague. I am an advocate for critical thinking, and critically, the points you made in your initial answer was very weak, and I will go on to elaborate why. First of all, you start by saying the term narcissist is a trending misnomer, which could be true, but I find it highly unlikely given the large amount of online resources and books out there and videos on narcissism, all giving the same description and extensive explanation for narcissistic abuse and related subjects, including but not limited to violation of privacy and human rights, gaslighting, triangulation, hoovering, stalking, parental alienation, which is a violation of parental rights, idealization, devaluation, and discard. To back up your statement, you gave three basic examples. Of vaguely described bad behaviors misunderstood as narcissism. Now, I'm very sure that most people who asks or follows this question have already educated themselves to a basic extent on narcissistic abuse through their own experience and basic research, allowing them to know that narcissistic abuse is persistent, cruel, and unbelievably inhumane. That it is simply so bad that there is no other term but narcissism or psychopathy that will fit the case. That being said, this behavior is definitely not the result of A, someone just having a bad mood, B, a marriage gone wrong, C, an anomaly in character due to dislike for the pretentious, or something they are opposed to. These are simply too silly a reason for the horrific abuse that narcissists engage in. As for sadism, most narcissists are sadists. They need others to suffer the eternal fate that they have cursed themselves with. They can't let go of a childhood abuse. Granted, they have been abused, they have been terrorized, they have been threatened, like horrifically in their childhood. They have gone through horrible childhood trauma. But that does not give them the right to abuse the innocent. That does not give them a free pass to abuse innocent people. It gives them the right to fight for human rights, to voice up, to speak their truth, to look for protection, to look for treatment, to look for settlement or whatever. But it does not give them the right to abuse other people, especially innocent people. You also made the very corrupt point that narcissists are under the protection of the Mental Health Act. Now, why I say it's corrupt? because he's almost advocating for it, right? He's almost trying to say that you can't do anything about it. The system is this way. They are going to be protected by the Mental Health Act, whether you like it or not. It is the way it is, and we have to worm ourselves around the system to make sure that we don't call them narcissists, to make sure that they are not protected through insanity by their criminal abuse, their covert psychological criminal behavior, psychological abuse and criminal behavior. We have to worm ourselves around to find a smart strategy by not calling them a narcissist so that we can persecute them. So that's why I call it corrupt. There is something called the Durham Insanity Defense, which absolves a perpetrator from a crime they have committed under the grounds of a mental disorder or insanity. Now, this should not deter us from revealing the fact that narcissism and psychopathy is on the rise, which serves to alert the people to fight for a petition or law that quarantines or hospitalizes such dangerous people, such dangerous individuals from the public before they can commit a crime. Once sufficient evidence has been presented to prove the persistent and horrific abuse that they have committed. So once we can prove, once we have documented evidence to prove the horrific abuse that narcissists engage in, then why should we not persecute them? Why should we not fight against them? Why should we not fight for a petition or a law that at least quarantines the insane, the psychologically psychologically diseased, the mentally diseased people who are abusing the innocent, knowingly abusing the innocent? Okay, no one has a right to abuse another human being. No one. Okay. That is all for this answer. You can read my answer to this question in my profile or by clicking this question. There are 29 answers, all advocate, not all, but a lot of people saying that there's only 1%, there's only, based on the facts, there's only 5% of the population that are correctly termed narcissistic personality disorder, that are really, really called narcissists, that are really that can be really diagnosed as being narcissistic. But no, it's not true. Why it's not true? Because there are so many people out there being abused right now as I'm speaking. Right now, there are people being abused. There are people trying to avoid abuse. There are people trying to fight against the abuse everywhere. And it is not true. Why? Because it is happening right now. It is before our own eyes. And why do we believe them? Why do we believe that there's only 1 to 5% of the population that is narcissistic? Because it is a fact. Because it is psychologically proven. Because it is, quote, academic, it is a knowledge base. It is a based on statistics, based on research, based on academia, based on what? Based on facts. Based on what facts? What are supporting those facts? Nothing is supporting those facts. What we are seeing is reality. That is more true than so-called facts. 1 to 6% of the population. Oh my God, I can't stand this. I'm not sure about prevalence. And there's also some people saying that there's only a few number of narcissists, but because they are so good at triangulation, they're so good at creating flying monkeys that it becomes it becomes an illusion that everyone is a narcissist. But no, I repudiate that fact by saying that if you are a flying monkey or if you are involved in abuse by proxy, you are a narcissist. You are actively joining the cult of a narcissist. You have become a narcissist. So this is my answer. Sorry, right. It's not too long, I think. Right, let's just go quickly into this, and then we can go into the next topic, which is the MK Ultra Survivor. I want to talk about that, and also something about the Mental Health Act. Not Mental Health Act, but briefly about someone who has been traumatized and executed as a result of their criminal behavior. So my answer to the question, why are there so many narcissists out there, is, did you notice that most relationships that you have in your life was a lie and it's happening everywhere? That's why this is a bit imposing, but you get to think for yourself if it's true, but it is happening everywhere. And most relationships, in my experience, most relationships was a lie. In my family, in my friendships, in my with my teachers, with my lecturers, with my neighbors, everyone, anyone, with a customer service people, with people in the shops, everyone. And I'm not being crazy here. I'm not being crazy here. It is the truth. I'm speaking from my real life experience. Did you notice that most relationships that you have in your life was a lie? Maybe you do, maybe you don't, maybe you might not have relationships that are lies. Maybe your relationships are fulfilling. Maybe they are real. Maybe they are true fulfilling relationships. And for that, I apologize for this statement, because you might not have come across narcissists in your life, and that would be that might be a good thing for you, because you are not traumatized by them, but most people are. And I want to make people who are under the blanket, or under the illusion that they are under the illusion that they are not being abused, I want to awaken them. That is why I'm saying this statement. Did you notice that most relationships that you have are people who are starting to be awakened? People who are starting to realize that most relationships in their life was a lie, that toxic, malevolent sadist seems to be everywhere, that bizarre behavior that cannot possibly be termed human are showing up constantly. Well, that just means you are waking up. The world is going into a new age, more and more quickly and blatantly being conquered by evil, sick, sadistic psychos. Narcissists are everywhere because there is a death cult running the world, manipulating the media and internet to censor content, and dumb down society while keeping the progression to this corrupt new world order hidden. So, censorship. In Facebook, I've made a lot of, I've been very, not provocative, but I've been very vocal. I've been very vocal about against people who are dumbing down society, against people who are using word salad and saying things without proper grounds. I've always been advocating for that, right? And I've two posts now, no, three posts. I have three posts. One was just a ranting. I was just complaining because I faced recent abuse, and I was just not ranting. I was what do you call that? I was venting out. I was venting out my feelings, and I didn't use bad words. I didn't use really bad words. I was just venting. I was just saying out my abuse encounter, and I was venting. That was one of the posts that was taken down within a day. And then there was one post where I was debating with one person who wasn't really debating with me. He was just giving out bad points, bad statements that aren't facts, that aren't grounded, that aren't supported facts. Poor debate. I was having a poor debate with someone, but I was fighting against him because he was trying to propagate this idea that we should not call people evil. We should not label people evil because that is not right. We should have compassion for people who are just who are just trying to get through their life, whatever. That evil is not a right word. That we should never use the word evil. So that is not right. No, no, Evil is a word to be used. Why does it exist in the dictionary? Because there are evil people out there. There are cases where misnomers happen, but very rarely, I would say. And there are very, very bad people out there that should be brought to justice. So another post that was taken down was one where I can't remember, but I was debating with someone who was um, uh, I can't remember, but it was taken down. It was related to narcissistic abuse, and it was taken down. So 3 posts now within the last month, within the last 2 months, there was 3 posts that was taken off Facebook. Within one day, within a few days, within a week. The first one was within a week. The second one was within 3 days, and the third one was within one day. Within one day of posting or of venting my feelings, it was taken off. Shadow banning. Okay, psychopaths create more psychopaths, driving those who refuse to abide by their horrible, perverse rules insane and into eventual suicide. Right? They either create more psychopaths or they drive people into insanity or suicide. People who are fighting against them, people who are, people who disagrees with their new world order. All while having many psychologists, whether ignorant or part of the cult, whether they know it or not, whether they know they are fighting with evil forces, to propagate this idea or not, to propagate this idea that narcissism is not on the rise. It is just the fact that they stand out and have so many supplies that it gives the illusion that they are everywhere. Okay, it is just the fact that they stand out. This is what I said just now. They stand out because they have so many supplies and that they give the illusion that they are everywhere, right? They could very well be clones of AI that have been programmed to stalk, harass, abuse, and confine humanity on a daily basis while making us feel crazy and frightened to speak up about this prevalence and the general acceptance of this persistence in a persistent violation, dehumanization, demoralization of every human being. So, if you don't believe in the AI being programmed to stalk us, all those things, if you don't believe in it, is fine. But I do believe that there are people who are assigned the task to monitor, to confine humanity, to make sure that we are not given free speech, that we are not given free thought, free will, that we are being held under the power and control of this new world order. I do believe that there are a lot of people governing us, making sure, not governing, but confining us, making sure that we are under their domination on a daily basis, right? Our neighbors, people in the checkout, people in your society, in your immediate surroundings. There are people censoring us. There are people self-censoring. There are people censoring us without even knowing that they are doing it because they have been programmed to, because they have been programmed by the media to, because they have been programmed by the education system to just believe anything other people say, to fight against any form of free speech, any form of free thought, any form of ideas that is against the norm, against the norm, against any form of otherworldly or creative ideas that is out of the ordinary. They discredit it, they demoralize it, demonize it, and they dismiss it. We need to come together as humans and fight against this epidemic. Don't just accept an explanation without question by a qualified authority figure. Psychologists, scientists, whatever they call themselves, you need to think it through. Does it really make sense with your reality? Narcissists make up only about 5% of the population. Bullshit! Bull fucking shit! It is everywhere. And psychopaths are becoming more and more audacious and pervasive. Rely on your intuition, your true intelligence. Psychopaths are becoming more and more audacious and pervasive. Rely on your intuition, your true intelligence. Don't just accept some credible source as gospel truth. Always put it through your own judgment. We are infinite consciousness, and they have restricted our vision and awareness for far too long. We need to open our hearts and minds. We need to open our hearts and minds to access our birthright to abundance and infinite wisdom. We need to awaken more and more and overthrow these sick, abusive, cruel dictators of the world. And I've shared this video by David Icke on the satanic cult or the death cult, or people part of the New World Order taking over humanity as we know it. So if you want to watch it, please do. Okay. Now the reason why this isn't so far-fetched, the reason why I believe that this idea that there are people who are dominating the world and going forward towards this new world order, towards this world domination, towards this complete power and control over our property rights, over our privacy, over our entire human rights, over the rights of all humans, all of humanity. The reason why I don't believe this is so far-fetched is because it is happening before my very own eyes. It is happening to me every day of my life. And it is happening to more and more people out there on Facebook support groups, on YouTube. People are starting to speak up, and people are being censored as they are doing so, as they are being speaking up. People are being censored. We need to fight against this, guys. We need to fight. Don't just believe the narrative, the programming that they have set for us. Okay, now I want to share a clip on, sorry, I just missed that. A clip on the mental health on someone who is executed because they have conducted a criminal act based on because they have a mental health disorder. So I want to let you see that mental health disorder can drive someone to conduct criminal acts, and that the system is not doing anything to prevent mental health disorders, that they are only or that they are not only not preventing people from being abused and incurring psychological damage, incurring trauma, and incurring mental disorders, they are not doing something about these people who have mental disorders. They are only executing them. They are not quarantining them. They are not getting to the bottom of it. They are not doing what that needs to be done. They are only executing. They are not preventing the constant rise in abuse, the constant rise in trauma, and the constant rise in conversion into the constant rise of incurring psychological damage, and as a result of incurring psychological trauma and damage, creating a mental disorder, what do you call it? Manifesting a mental illness and disorder for oneself. Nobody, the authorities, the mental health institution, they are not doing something that seriously needs to be done to prevent people from to prevent people from going more and more psychopathic, more and more perverse, more and more abusive, to stop the generational abuse that is going on and is growing and growing. So let's just get into the video. Sorry about speaking too much.
By a recollection of a client of mine. My client was a guy named Will. He was from North Texas. He never knew his father very well because his father left his mom while she was pregnant with him. And so he was destined to be raised by a single mom, which might have been all right, except that this particular single mom was a paranoid schizophrenic. And when Will was 5 years old, she tried to kill him with a butcher knife. She was taken away by authorities and placed in a psychiatric hospital. And so for the next several years, Will lived with his older brother until he committed suicide by shooting himself through the heart. And after that, Will bounced around from one family member to another until by the time he was 9 years old, he was essentially living on his own. That morning that I was sitting with Katya and Lincoln, I looked at my son and I realized that when my client Will was his age, he'd been living by himself for 2 years. Will eventually joined a gang and committed a number of very serious crimes, including, most seriously of all, a horrible, tragic murder. And Will was ultimately executed as punishment for that crime. But I don't want to talk today about the morality of capital punishment. I certainly think that my client shouldn't have been executed, but what I would like to do today instead is talk about the death penalty in a way I've never done before, in a way that is entirely non-controversial. I think that's possible because there is a corner of the death penalty debate, maybe the most important corner, where everybody agrees, where the most ardent death penalty supporters and the most vociferous abolitionists are on exactly the same page. That's the corner I want to explore. Before I do that, though, I want to spend a couple of minutes telling you how a death penalty case unfolds, and then I want to tell you 2 lessons that I have learned over the last 20 years as a death penalty lawyer from watching well more than 100 cases unfold in this way. You can think of a death penalty case as a story that has...
Okay, so this is all about death penalty. So I'm just going to skip ahead and go into the part where he says, how the mental health institution of, I think this is America, of their nation is not doing what they should be doing. Instead of executing those executing criminals, we should in fact be preventing them from committing the crime in the first place. We should we should imprison them and make sure that they can cause no one any harm any longer. Life imprisonment maybe. And also he talked about why how we can prevent it, but the mental health institution did not. How we can prevent someone who has been abused, who has knowingly been abused from becoming a criminal. That nobody's doing anything to prevent that. So that is the crucial point that he made. Nobody is doing anything to prevent someone from becoming a criminal who has been horrifically abused and traumatized, and nobody is doing anything to treat their trauma. Nobody is doing anything to save these traumatized, terrorized children from their psychological abuse, from their psychological emotional turmoil that is still that is constantly there, that is just programmed into them, because it's so horrifying. So that there's no, they just have to deal with it themselves. That's basically, that's basically what happened to this boy.
But the thing is that for every $15,000 that we spend intervening in the lives of economically and otherwise disadvantaged kids in those earlier chapters, we save $80,000 in crime-related costs down the road. Even if you don't agree that there's a moral imperative that we do it, it just makes economic sense. I want to tell you about the last conversation that I had with Will. It was the day that he was going to be executed. And we were just talking. There was nothing left to do in his case. And we were talking about his life. And he was talking first about his dad, who he hardly knew, who had died, and then about his mom, who he did know, who was still alive. And I said to him, I know the story. I've read the records. I know that she tried to kill you. I said, but I've always wondered whether you really actually remember that. He said, I don't remember anything from when I was 5 years old. Maybe you just remember somebody telling you. And he looked at me and he leaned forward and he said, Professor, he'd known me for 12 years, he still called me Professor. He said, Professor, I don't mean any disrespect by this, but when your mama picks up a butcher knife that looks bigger than you are and chases you through the house screaming she's gonna kill you, and you have to lock yourself in the bathroom and lean against the door and holler for help until the police get there. He looked at me and he said, that's something you don't forget. I hope there's one thing you all won't forget. In between the time you arrived here this morning and the time we break for lunch, there are going to be 4 homicides in the United States. We're going to devote enormous social resources to punishing the people who commit those crimes, and that's appropriate because we should punish people who do bad things. But 3 of those crimes are preventable. If we make the picture bigger and devote our attention to the earlier chapters, then we're never going to write the first sentence that begins the death penalty story. Thank you.
So preventative measures. Prevention is better than cure, but that does not mean that we shouldn't punish those who are actively abusing and abusing and hurting the innocent. Criminals should be punished. Okay. But we should do something to make sure that criminals aren't born in the first place. But because narcissists are they are so abusive that they do need to be quarantined and confined. They need to have zero access to anyone that they can hurt. They need to have zero access to anyone. They need to be imprisoned. They are so dangerous and horrible that there's no limits. There's no limit to what they can do, because they have no empathy and no conscience. None at all. We need to bring them to justice, guys. So I'm going to share this another video on MK Ultra. Kathy O'Brien is a MK Ultra survivor, and she has spoken years ago. She has spoken about her horrific abuse by a covert institution that her parents has essentially sell her out to. So this covert institution has conducted mind control experiments on her ruthlessly, like an animal, basically. And she was sexually abused. She was mentally, psychologically abused, and she was forced to conceive a daughter who was also abused, and they were, the abuse was horrific. and it was part of the MK Ultra experiment in America. So in this video is more of a brief statement of how I want to share how joy can be helpful, how joy is so important to heighten our vibrations, to make sure that our vibrations are not accessible to those to mind control, not accessible not only to mind control but to people who have this adept skill to read our vibrations and to mimic our vibrations, to infiltrate our minds, to covertly abuse us psychologically. So when we heighten our vibrations, all of these things slowly are become outside our dimension. Basically, they are repelled. They are repelled by us when we are able to vibrate with a higher frequency. And also, she talked about awareness, right? Awareness of the fact that bad things are happening in the world, that evil exists, that there are people who will stop at nothing until they gain ultimate power and control over all of humanity, until they are able to terrorize you, destroy you, drive you to suicide, until they are able to completely disempower you, dehumanize you, and demoralize every fiber of your being until you have nothing left, until you are left with a mindless body. So awareness and joy is what I want to share through this video. Let's go ahead with it.
Thanks. Love is the greatest healer. Oh, I'm so happy to be here today. I'm here with a happy mind. Not the kind of happy that's just a giddy emotion or anything like that, but a happy mind. The kind of mind that is free from fear, bitterness, negativity, all those horrible things that we see on the news and all like that is not healthy for us. I'm here with a happy mind, the kind of happiness that allows for life to unfold the way that it should, where synchronicity and coincidences line up and confirm that you're on the right path and doing the right thing. That kind of happiness that allows for free thought, expanded thinking, and knowing more of what's going on in this world than just what we're told. Negativity and fear immobilizes. That's why we're being bombarded with it constantly on television. The violence, the constant violent images, the negativity, the fear, those are the things that make it difficult to be able to stand up and make a positive difference in the world. It's the kind of thing that just dashes hope. It takes away that ability to have the spiritual strength to stand up and enjoy your life and live the meaningful life that we're all meant to live. I feel so fortunate to have survived my ordeal, to know this truth. Because this is the kind of truth that I want to share with everybody, because we all deserve it. We all should know that there's so much more available to our lives than what we're seeing through politics and war, environmental disasters, the horrors that are on TV. Social engineering through the media is a deliberate effort to suppress the spirit of the people. It's a deliberate effort to control the people. There's a criminal faction in control of our government, and they know that people are easily led by fear. They know what happens to the brain. Whether we just make that choice or don't make that choice, our brains respond to trauma the same way, and they know that. That information on how our brains respond to trauma has been repressed from the mental health community. and from all of us. It's our brain. We have a right to know this important information. We need to know that when trauma occurs in our society, that we're all highly suggestible and easily led. Mind control is an important truth that is like the piece of the puzzle that once you understand mind control, that piece of the puzzle brings the whole picture into focus, and we start understanding what is going on in our world. And with that understanding, once we know that truth, once we have that awareness, that's the first step towards positive change. These criminals that are in control of our government, in control of our media, in control of our knowledge base and information have been in power for a long time. They've been using this technique on us for decades. It seems like things are worse right now because we see so much violence on TV, we see so much horror.
So I just want to continue. I just want to pause and say that she is a MK Ultra survivor, which I've mentioned. But if you research briefly, if you to scratch the surface, even if you scratch the surface of MK Ultra, if you just research it superficially, you will find out that it is a real life experiment done to people, victims who are being experimented on to become basically human robots, right? People who just do whatever they are commanded to do. So they are basically mind control experiment victims. So MK Ultra is a mind control experiment done by the CIA, I think, and it is being, and people are starting to speak up, right? She spoke up in 1960 something, I think. In this video, as you can see over here, it's Kathy O'Brien, ex-Illuminati mind control victim. So this video briefly talked extensively about her experience, which is real, and she has documented it, and she has scars on her body. She's a living proof of the fact that mind control experiments exist, and they have been done ruthlessly in an inhumane way, just for the purpose of a few evil, power crazy people, psychopaths. And if you understand mind control, like she says, if you understand mind control, it can put a huge piece of the puzzle to all of this abuse that is going on. And I will show a video later on someone, Fiona Barnett, who shared her story about child abuse and child pornography that she was being forced to engage in, and satanic ritual abuse that that she faced as a child. So is, you can't possibly have someone fake these things, because they are living proof. They have the memories of it, they have the scars of it, they are living proof, and now they are speaking up. So if you research briefly on mind control, MK Ultra, and all of these things, I'm very sure that you will find it very, what do you call that, logical, and you'll find that it makes sense to the reality that you're facing right now, especially as narcissism are becoming more and more prevalent, psychopaths everywhere, violation of your rights, and covert abuse everywhere. That just there I have nothing to say other than mind control.
When in fact, that is awareness starting. The truth is coming out. It's starting to rise. And with that awareness comes the first step towards positive, necessary change that we all need to reclaim control over our own lives, and to be able to gather our strength of spirit and start living that life with a happy mind again, where everything happens at such a profound level and it's so meaningful. We all will get to live that again as we fully understand exactly what is happening to our society. Mind control is a sliding scale, and it affects people on a very robotic level, such as military special forces, such as the kind of mind control that I experienced during the Reagan-Bush administration, when I was totally robotic, carrying out the will of others and doing only what I was told to do. My experience was extreme, but it's given me insight into the deliberate machine that's being used to manipulate the minds of the masses. It gave me inside knowledge from inside the White House Pentagon level that I was subjected to. And it's given me the insight in my own healing path, once I regain control over my own mind, what a joy it is to celebrate free thought every day and to make personal choices. One of my biggest personal choices that I have made is to choose happiness. I choose happiness, not giddiness, not ignoring the realities of what's going on in the world, but that happy mind that allows for clarity of thinking, to be able to see the solutions and to see beyond what we're being told, to be able to see beautiful people like yourselves who can't relate to the kind of violent nonsense that we're seeing every day any more than I can. TV doesn't... TV and the media doesn't represent us any more than the criminals in control of our government do. They don't represent us either. And exposing them for their deliberate plan against us is a first step towards the real change in our government and in our school systems and in our lives. Using the example of my life's experience may help to understand exactly how mind control works. I was horribly abused as a child, and when I was growing up, Project Paperclip had brought in a Nazi and fascist scientist from Germany, along with the mind control information that had been used on the people in Germany during the years of Hitler's reign. That information, we didn't really win the war per se. Instead, we just simply transferred it over here. That information on mind control was well known by the CIA, and there's MK Ultra mind control that was going on at the time that I was born. So I was born at a time when this was just first being implemented. And it was known from that Himmler research that any child that was being sexually abused like I was, any child that was being used in pornography like I was, would be a prime candidate or a chosen one for MK Ultra mind control. It wasn't that I knew that what was being done to me was wrong or that I was even being abused. I didn't have the capacity for that kind of understanding. For one, my whole environment was saturated with it. My family was sexually abusing me, Catholic Church was sexually abusing me and subjecting me to horrible occult trauma. It was all around. Even my grandfather's Blue Masonic Lodge had a lot of political people attending it that were also abusing me. So it seemed like the whole world was. Even law enforcement was involved. So where was I going to turn? There wasn't really any place to turn, and I didn't know that it should be any different than what I was experiencing, except for that I hoped so much inside myself that there was some place in the world where people were kind to each other, where they were happy, where they were good to each other. I knew that that had to be, because it was something that I could still feel inside of me at that time. Well, while I was still really little,
Okay, I won't share too much of this. If you want to watch the whole video, it's Kathy O'Brien, MK Ultra Survivor. And she made a great speech on this one as well. Ex-Illuminati mind control victim, Kathy O'Brien. If you want to watch that, please do. She explains in that video, she explains all of her encounters while being experimented on as a mind control subject. So I'm gonna go into this video quickly and then I'll go to done survey.
Throughout my childhood, I was a victim of Australia's VIP child sex trafficking ring. For example, I was prostituted to pedophile parties at Parliament House, Canberra, and to an international leader at Fairbairn Military Airport. The people involved in this elite pedophile ring included high-ranking politicians, police and judiciary. From the late 1980s, I reported my abuse experiences to multiple healthcare professionals, not one of whom adhered to mandatory reporting requirements. I reported to New South Wales Police in 2008. I reported to the Royal Commission in 2012. I reported to Operation Attest in Canberra. I made formal witness statements to New South Wales Police and have agreed to do more. I've reported directly to the New South Wales and Federal Police Commissioners and to the New South Wales Coroner. I have provided sufficient names, times, dates and places for authorities to investigate. My experiences were horrific beyond words. I witnessed child abduction, torture, rape, murder. But the way I've been treated for reporting the crimes I witnessed and experienced has been far worse than my original abuse experiences. Victims endure the most miserable childhoods. We then spend the rest of our lives paying for the crimes committed against us. Victims are constantly placed under excessive scrutiny. If we can't provide a precise time and date for something that happened 40 years ago, we're called liars. If we get emotional, we're labelled crazy. If we are vocal, we're just attention seekers. It's time to focus our attention away from victims and onto those responsible for the crimes against children. In the 2006 census, Australians identified child protection as their #1 concern. Why then does our government continue to ignore the public's concern for children? Australia is a pedophile haven. Our laws are written, interpreted and administered in a way that benefits pedophiles and silences victims of crime. Our university lecturers teach pro-pedophilia material. Our health boards continue to allow offending doctors and psychologists to practice. We are up to our second Royal Commission into child abuse in 20 years. The Wood Royal Commission was indeed a failure. If it was successful, I wouldn't be standing here right now. The Wood Royal Commission was established in response to complaints about the VIP pedophile ring that abused me. This is the exact same elite pedophile ring that I reported to the current Royal Commission. In 2013, I asked the Royal Commission, what are you going to do differently to the failed Wood Royal Commission? They had no answer for me. If the Royal Commission does not result in the investigation and prosecution of the VIP pedophiles that victims like me have named, then they are just information gathering. I know you want me to stand here and name names. Yet to concentrate on the names serves to shift the focus from the entire reason I'm standing here. I have provided the names to the authorities. It is their responsibility to combine my information with what other victims have presented and properly investigate. And now I will give you some VIP names. Michelle. Michelle was a friendly 12-year-old with long dark hair. I witnessed her abduction, rape and murder when I was 6 years old. Samantha. Samantha was 9 years old with wavy long brown hair and a warm smile. She had Down syndrome. Samantha was murdered when I was 12 years old. Chloe. Chloe was an attractive 4-year-old with brown straight cut hair into a bulb and sea green eyes. Chloe was murdered when I was 14 years old. Don't make this about me. Focus on those victims who couldn't be here today to personally share what happened to them at the hands of the VIP pedophiles who have infiltrated Australia's supreme institutions.
Okay, so if you want to watch the whole video, please do. And she proceeded by talking about her own child abuse, her own abuse when she was a child, where she was subjected to sexual abuse satanic rituals, which is she'll talk about it later, but I won't share it anymore because I think it's way too long, this video, but I'm just gonna talk about it briefly. So satanic ritual abuse is where, according to what I understood from the video, is that she said it is when you're participating in a ritual where they sacrifice a child and murder the child, kill the child, maybe more than one child, I'm not sure, but I think it's just one child. And then they sacrifice the child as a sacrifice, as a worship, to worship the demons and satanic gods. So they are basically worshiping Satan by sacrificing children and drinking their blood and having orgies in the midst of the bloodshed. So that is the satanic ritual abuse. And can you imagine having to face that, having to experience that while you are a child? And so another point I want to make is that she was sexually abused. She was satanic ritually abused, or whatever you want to call it. And and at one point in the video, she said she was forced to bite the face of a dead, decapitated head, the decapitated head of a dead child. She was forced to take a bite out of that, a human flesh bite, a bite out of human flesh by someone who is part of the satanic cult. She was forced to do that. Can you imagine how traumatizing that is? And while she said it, you can see her horrible, horrific her face. I think it was this one. I'll show it briefly right now, the satanic ritual one. Sorry about this, guys. Bear with me for 10 seconds or so. I know where it is. I just need to find it.
He's really overweight and he used to walk like that with his... Father Evans? The fat Engadine policeman. I remember him sitting in here and everything. He used to walk. He was really overweight and he used to walk like that with his hands turned to the back. So
I think it was part 2. Sorry, guys. Oh yes, it's here.
Baal, Lucifer, Hail Satan.
Okay, we're almost there.
Take you, eat. And I was there.
Yep,
He
this
came
one.
down and he picked up a head of one of the kids that had dark hair. And I'm standing here, and Beasley picks up this head and he shoves it in my face like this, and there's this decapitated head in my face, and he says, "Take you, eat." And he made me take a bite out of the face. And then everyone just had an orgy.
So can you see her expression after she said that? Her expression after she said, "He made me take a bite out of that face," and the way she said it, she was as she's saying it, her tone is almost like dropping down because she couldn't face the fact that she actually did what she did, but she was forced to. Can you see how traumatizing it made her?
Take you, eat. And he made me take a bite out of the face. And then everyone just had an orgy. It was just disgusting. And the most vile thing you've ever seen in your life. And that's Bathurst City Hall.
So That's the that's the satanic ritual abuse. So as I was saying, someone Fiona Barnett, someone who was sexually abused and abused so horrifically, is able to come out of it and is able to survive it and is able to remain sane. You know, she's not a narcissist, as we saw in her video. The way she talked, she's not a narcissist. She's not abusive to the innocent. She's not a criminal, and yet she has been abused so horrifically. So we see that it is not a, you know, it is not confirmed. It is not a sealed fate. Just because you're abused, it is not an excuse for you to abuse others. It is never it is never right to abuse the innocent. Nothing gives you a right. Nothing at all gives you a right to abuse the innocent. You can justify it however you like, but nothing gives you a right to take away the power of another human being, to take away their values, their dignity, their humanity, their morals, and their values, to take away their power. That is not right. So I think I'm just gonna end it here. It's well over 2 hours now. I'm gonna continue with dance therapy after this. So if you want to join me in dance therapy, I think it's 6 or 7. I think it's 7. But if you want to join me later in 20 or 30 minutes time, then please do. Also, I will be having an exclusive live stream this Friday at GMT 2 a.m. For at my Patreon page, and I will be not reviewing, but I will be going in depth into a book called The Dark Side of Personality, which is a clinical, which is kind of a book by a clinical psychologist, scientists, and all those researchers who are in the academic field. These academic people or clinical psychologists and scientists. They have compiled this document that explains the dark side of personality, which is narcissism, Machiavellianism, and psychopathy. But I think mostly the book will be talking about narcissism and how it comes about and what it's really about, and the gist of it, the depths into narcissistic abuse, and understanding what narcissism really is about and how they come to be. So if you want to know more about the Dark Side of Personality book, join me at my exclusive live stream at Patreon this Friday. The Patreon link is in the description below. This Friday at GMT 2 a.m. And I'll see you in the dance therapy later. In about 20 minutes time from now, there will be a dance therapy session. So if you want to join me. I'll be posting the links on Facebook and Quora, and just join me at YouTube in my YouTube channel if you want to as well. So that's all for today. I hope you learned something. I hope you learned something useful and meaningful, and I hope you continue to fight for your rights, to question authority, to question, to judge for yourself whatever information that you're presented with, whatever information that you're given to put it through your own thinking process, your own critical analysis, and don't just listen to what people have to say. Don't just blindly accept whatever people have to say, but question, right? Question, put it through your own judgment, put it through your own intuition. Question for yourself if it's right, and if they're making any sense at all. Don't just absorb and don't just blindly listen, is what I'm saying. So that is the main message for the day. Critical thinking and self identity, really kind of preserving your self identity and not letting people take away your power to control your own belief, to condition your own, to direct your own ideas, your own thoughts, your own belief, your own way of life, and your own prospects and values. So that's all for this session. Stay mindful, peaceful, and powerful, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye now.